first Dark Souls game has an intricate and interconnected world design that invokes a need for exploration and discovery for players, and it is beautiful. From the beginning of playing this masterpiece, you are immersed in a dark and ominous realm. With few exceptions, the game is comprised of various interconnected areas that the players explore in an order they choose, engendering a unique and personalized experience with each playthrough. For instance, you may begin in the Undead Asylum and journey to the Firelink Shrine, which serves as a hub to various parts of the world, such as the Undead Burg, the Depths, and Blighttown. The geographical and topographical continuity between these areas is seamless and intuitive, and is accomplished without the use of a map. A map is an incredibly powerful tool in games. It provides you with so much information, a ludicrous amount of information, that once you notice it not existing, it feels very strange. In Dark Souls, the absence of a map allows the player to have a discoverability and adventure through not knowing what is around you and by not showing you where your enemies are. This non-linear aspect allows the player to uncover secrets, find hidden paths, and encounter the challenges in unexpected ways. For example, the accessibility of the Darkroot Garden and the lower part, the Darkroot Basin, which contains the DLC and the Hydra, is a giant loop with access on multiple sides. The game never ceases to amaze you as you complete an area and loop back to the place where you've been and say, I'm back here? How the hell did I get back here? From areas you have been and areas you seek to adventure to, your goal is almost always in view. From major points in Firelink and in the Undead Burg, you can observe the walls of Anor Londo. This means that your major goal is quite literally always in the background. You begin the game and enter within one ring of a city and progress to the city walls where you fight the Taurus demon and continually look up and say, how the hell am I going to get all the way up there? There are no levels to Dark Souls. It is a continuous stream of exploration, and if you observe your surroundings, you can notice major points of interest that are your new goals, such as seeing Seath's library from Anor Londo or the giant painted picture as you traverse the rafters and beams of the chapel. But what really makes the interconnected world of Dark Souls a gaming masterpiece is how it all ties into the larger themes of the game. I think this interconnected world is unique as it is connected physically through the gameplay and the Dark Souls map, but also in its lore and its ideas of cycles, and in a rudimentary description, its time traveling aspect. You travel and loop back to places over time as well as over space. Additionally, the NPCs you meet along the way have backstories tie into the overall narrative of the game. Even the bosses are not just mindless enemies, but characters with their own motivations and histories. Another important part of the Dark Souls playthrough experience is seeing the different areas connect and be easily observable. For example, you can see Ash Lake from the Tomb of the Giants, and you can also see Lost Izalith in the Tomb of the Giants. I think that most games miss this part. It may seem obvious, but to progress to different areas and see not just the previous zone you have been, but see the unique environment of a completely different area show up in an unexpected vista allows you to truly feel that the world is not just made up of a physically impossible landscape. See my DS2 critique, I guess. I find it very interesting how the game at its core, its essence and lore are about cycles, and we experience the game in a blend of one area to another, smoothly circling from one place to another to find ourselves sometimes at the start of our adventure, be it from elevators or even New Game Plus. The continuity of the game and the interconnected world is very rarely broken up, although when done so, it's quite purposeful. Areas such as Ash Lake feels very, why would anyone go down here? And an argument could be made that the final zone of the game, the Kiln of the First Flame, to be one directional and close. However, I think that we can only critique Ash Lake for its emptiness and absence of content, but not its linear and fixed nature. It does not loop back onto itself or connect to any other part of the game besides where you enter from. However, this is where it all started, not where you start as the player, but it is where within the mythos, those who picked up the Lord Souls waged war on the everlasting dragons, and thus fits within the narrative of the zone's lore. On the other hand, the Kiln of the First Flame is the endgame. It is the final act of the play, a crescendo event of tension, and it does not need to be integrated into the world like a final junction of multiple areas. The wondrous aspect of the Kiln is that with the choice the chosen undead makes, it will satisfy the lore, and the Dark Souls cycle will continue just as you continue to play the game through New Game Plus. The interconnected world design helps create a sense of continuity and realism in the world. The player can encounter familiar enemies in unexpected places. This design choice adds to the overall richness and depth of the world, making the journey through Dark Souls feel like an adventure. The second half of this video will more focus on the general aspects of the first Dark Souls game, be it positive or negative. I think that out of the 3 Dark Souls games, it has the most cohesive story. It is simple to follow without really having to investigate the lore thoroughly, but if you do read items or really pay attention to the voice lines or even watch a video, it really enhances the experience. However, if you don't, all you do is hack slash and visually experience the world with just the opening cinematic alone. Almost everything is explained. When critiquing Dark Souls, we often compare it against what came after it. Dark Souls 2, 3, Bloodborne, and Elden Ring. And we should be really careful when doing so as it recontextualizes the era and when the game was released. I was there 10,000 years ago in 2011. People looking up guides for everything was not as prevalent back then, and YouTube was completely different. I think at the time, if I had to look up a guide for Dark Souls, it was either a text file, you know, the one with all the hashes at the start, or maybe an IGN guide where it was like 3 sentences and 2 screenshots of every enemy, and you had to try and read the guide and play at the same time. We did not have that general Soulsborne skills we have now. This is really starting to sound like a WoW video, and I hate it, but it's kind of true. From the time of release and up until today, this game has stood the test of time. New players and streamers are still beginning their Soulsborne series playthrough and still loving it. The game offers a digestible lore, relatively straightforward mechanics, few gimmicks, fun interactions, difficulty, PvP, a solid DLC, and much, much more. On the other hand, I can agree to a certain extent that Dark Souls' latter half, excluding its DLC, is worse than the first half. I think this is because the Lord Souls are a pushover. See Nito, Bed of Chaos, and Gwyn. However, Bed of Chaos to me isn't problematic because of its simplicity, but more so its novelty. An experimental boss that really cannot compare to any other in the series and has not had its mechanics repeated, fortunately. Furthermore, although Gwyn may be disappointing in difficulty to some, I think that having Gwyn the way he is, a soon-to-be soulless husk, barely clinging on to life, with a music score that matches, is greatly valued by myself and many of the community over a very difficult encounter. Furthermore, I think with the DLC, most people were satisfied with the endgame difficult boss encounters, such as Artorias and Manus. Build diversity is scarce in the game, with magic not really being good. The final category of the negative aspects is simple problems, which really annoy me. Some bonfires are far too hidden within the game and increase the run back or difficulty significantly, as many would not be able to find them without assistance, particularly the bonfire at the top of Sense Fortress and the bonfire next to the Artorias Crest Gate. Lastly, I think the specific steps needed to be taken in order to get to the DLC far too convoluted and should be more straightforward. There are probably still Reddit posts and YouTube videos still being watched on how to unlock this DLC. The instructions to access the DLC weren't released officially until long after the game had launched. Ultimately, the world design of Dark Souls is a standout aspect of the game and contributes to its sense of exploration, mystery, discovery, wonder, and continuity. The world design is one of the major factors which make the game an unforgettable experience. I think after reviewing, critiquing, and analyzing the first Dark Souls game, I've come to the conclusion that this game is great by choice. It feels like each aspect of the game was carefully created to give a great experience to the player. It is purposeful and deliberate in its design. This is great to see, as the hard work of the developers is somehow felt by the player, maybe through some sort of gaming osmosis. For those that play the game, they can recognize greatness after completing it. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you could all understand my Australian accent, and please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.